One of the coolest things about the Super Bowl is that obviously you grow up and you root for players. And, as I got to be a certain age, it was going to be apparent that I was not going to be an NFL player or a Major League Baseball player or anything like that. I was going to go on and be hopefully, I actually wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a sports writer, somebody like Jeff Pearlman, Michael Silver, people like that, before I eventually, got an opportunity to be on television and things like that. But guys that I loved Roy Firestone, Jim Rome, and also Chris Meyer. And it was so amazing, or Chris Myers, excuse me, it was so amazing, like walking through this, and you see these people and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is Chris Myers, like, oh my God. And then he wants to hang out with us. He wants to hang out and chop it up. And I'm like, really? And then I still don't believe that he knows who I am, but he pretended like he did. So that was pretty cool. We have a great conversation coming up with Chris Myers. So Sammy, go ahead and start the show.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Adam Rank.
It's Hester trying to work it back to the middle. Gets past the first wave, and here he goes. It's Hester inside the 30. Hester's going to take it all the way for a touchdown. And no flag, 92 yards.
The sickest Chicago Bears and fantasy football podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank, as we once again going through our clip show. I know, not a clip show, says everybody, if you're watching The Simpsons or anything like that. But I think for this intents and purposes, I think it was great to go back and look at some of the great conversations that we had during Super Bowl week. And I want to thank our friends at Windy City Sports Cards for allowing all of this to be possible. That's right. At Windy City Sports Cards, we specialize in buying and selling all things related to Chicago sports. Whether you are a diehard fan of the Bears, Bulls, Cubs, White Sox, Blackhawks, Sky, Fire, whatever, we have got you covered with an extensive selection of sports memorabilia and collectibles. And in addition to their Chicago-focused items, if you want to get something, if you want a Willie Randolph card, oh my gosh, hit up my friend Mike at Windy City Sports Cards, and he will get you sorted in. Speaking of Chris Myers, where he was going around, we'll talk. We're going to get a couple of his comments here. It was so cool because I ended up seeing Chris Myers around the Radio Row a couple of times. He was doing an interview in Washington, D.C. before I was, and I was waiting. And it was funny because his handler, Kyle, was like, yeah, Chris Myers is really interested in teaching. And I'm like, really? So I'm like, okay, well, let me talk to him. And I actually held court with Chris Myers at the Super Bowl, talking 10 minutes about Myers at Chapman University, giving him I'm giving Chris Myers advice. It was truly a wild situation, but it was really cool. But we also did talk a little bit of football for the podcast here. So right now, this is going to be him talking about Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen. Here's Chris Myers. Take it away, Sammy.
Ask you about one team that's not in the play. It's not here, but an interest to me, the Chicago Bears. I'm a Bears guy. How do you feel like Ben Johnson is going to do with Caleb Williams?
I'm a big fan of his. I got to do a lot of Lion games when he first, in fact, I did one of his first games taking over as offensive coordinator. Dan Campbell, after Anthony Lynn had to step in and run the offense, and then kind of tutored him into it and saw him grow into the position. Very, I would say, malleable with his players and his offense and his play calls, along with being so creative, easy to get along with, although a stern leader. So I think he'll do well, and I think he'll get the most out of Caleb Williams, and I know he wanted the job. I just hope some of the front office guys in Chicago don't screw things up. Okay, that's just one. The image of where they've been over the years. I think they got this right, and I think the Dennis Allen defensive coordinator too will allow Ben to focus on his part of the ball.
Kind of like McVay with Wade Phillips.
So yeah, I saw that early breakthrough, and I think when you think of Tampa Bay when they won with Todd Bowles for Bruce Arians, some guys are so and that's a great match. And Dennis has experience as a head coach and obviously as a defensive coordinator. It's a tough division right there, but I think I like the Ben Johnson move. I was surprised. I thought he might check other things out. I know he was on the radar for other people, but apparently he really wanted it, and I give them credit for making the move and going and getting him.
And that's one of the things too, is that there is anybody who's been around league circles is going to be like, I hope the Bears don't go out there and screw it up, which is because the Bears have had problems before with the front office and everything like that. However, and Chris is sitting there talking about like how he thought that other teams were going to be into the mix, whether it was going to be the Las Vegas Raiders, the Jacksonville Jaguars, or anything like that. I was looking at this as an endorsement of the Bears front office and everything that's been, everything that's been against them, that they've been, chided for or anything like that. This was kind of a endorsement of like, no, these guys know what they're doing. They've actually got it together. George McCaskey went out there and put up the money. And George McCaskey was out there and said, listen, this needs to be done. Kevin Warren, with a couple of weeks left in the season, had that sort of awkward press conference with Ryan Poles. And people are like, oh, they looked uncomfortable. And Kevin Warren came out and said, listen, Ryan Poles is conducting this search. He is going to be making the decision, which people just were like, no, he's not. This is the Bears being the Bears, which again, it's understandable why you would feel that way. But ultimately, Ben Johnson didn't interview really with anybody. He took a Zoom meeting with the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't even know if he talked to Jacksonville. He was on a Zoom meeting with the Chicago Bears and said, listen, I want to coach this team. Please hire me to coach this team. And he was sincere, and this is the place that he wanted to be. And we've seen ever since he's been hired, talking about that and talking to all these, talking to the front office staff and doing the doing the rah-rah stuff or whatever. But then that's been it so far. That's all he said. He wasn't at the Super Bowl, to my knowledge. We did not see him on Radio Row. I didn't see him pop up anywhere else. Ben Johnson was doing his thing. He was locked and loaded and getting them ready for the upcoming combine and the draft and all of that stuff. And that's what I want to see. I hope in the coming weeks, as we move on to the combine, and I know Ben Johnson will be there because he needs to be there. I don't want to see him holding court. I don't want to see like massive press conferences. Yeah, he should meet with some reporters and do stuff like that. That would be great. I would love it. But at the same time, I want him in the hole. Then I want him in it, locked in and going on. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about going on to anybody else's show. Don't worry about doing anything else. Just go in and lock in and be the coach of the Chicago Bears. Because again, you see it. And Chris Myers has been around forever. So when he sits there and he understands, like, I don't want the Bears to screw this up. Okay, yeah, I get it. Neither do we. But that's a sentiment. And it's a reason. I get it. I've always implored people not to be too harsh on the McCaskies, but I understand why you would be. You have reason to be. There is tangible evidence in the past. However, you have to give them credit for going out there and getting their guy. Chris Myers himself, you could see he was stunned a little bit. I'm surprised. Yeah, of course you were. But it should show you that this Bears organization is now a serious franchise. They're not just mailing it in. All right. Parking was terrible. Okay. I didn't pick up my kids. I was supposed to. It's 15 degrees and raining here in Southern California. The world is shut down. But we do have one more Chris Myers clip talking about Caleb Williams. Sammy, go ahead and play that one, please.
For a while, they finally have a quarterback, and I think he is going to be a good one. Is he better than Jaden Daniels? We can always have that argument down the road because of what Jaden did, and just like the year before with C.J. Stroud, right? And Bryce Young. We got to let those things play out a little bit. But I think you finally got a guy. And I mean, really, who's the greatest Bear quarterback? I mean, other than going back to
Walter Payton on the halfback option.
There you go. Okay, not to take anything away from Jim McMahon or. I guess Eric Kramer was there for a while. Jay Cutler. Yeah, I covered a few of his teams, but they weren't even at the level that I think Caleb Williams can get to.
You know what? We had Eric Kramer on a couple of weeks or recently, and I've told Eric this because I always make that joke about Walter Payton on the halfback option. Like he's always the third one. I usually build up like McMahon, Cutler, Walter Payton on the halfback option. Eric Kramer gets a lot of love. Oh, he gets a lot of love. For what he did with the Bears. And it was not a long run, but for what he did with the Bears, people still hold that in high esteem. But it also shows you like somebody, and it wasn't like Eric Kramer, like it's almost like, we were joking about this with Braggs the other day where it's like, Bears legend Jared Allen in the Hall of Fame. He's like, he wasn't really a Bear. Like Eric Kramer was here just as long, it feels like. So it says something about the Bears position, but I do like what Chris was talking about. Like, this is something that needs to play out. We need to allow the opportunity to breathe and to go out there and to play out and see where we are. I know that the society is all about being instantaneous. Everybody wants to declare victory already and be like, hey, look at this. Jaden Daniels, obviously the best player ever, the best quarterback in NFL history. Like, people want to make those proclamations because it's something that sells. It's the SEO of the internet Google searches, I think it's changed the way that people look at things. Now, I know, like, listen, headlines have always been something with newspapers. You always want to have a headline, but what you were trying to sell was a newspaper outside of a Del Taco or an In-N-Out burger. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to go sit there and have lunch and you're like, oh, am I going to buy the Register or am I going to buy the LA Times or whatever city you're in? Am I going to buy the Tribune or the Sun Times? You know what I'm saying? It's not new, but still, I think in this age of like SEO, search engine optimization, the keywords, the buzzwords that sit here and really resonate with people. If you put out something and we're like, the best Chris Myers interview, people are going to be interested in seeing it. And actually, what people like more is the word worst. So there's this rush to judgment with everything, not allowing it to breathe. Everybody was already writing off Bryce Young for what he did during his rookie season, although towards the end of the year, played pretty well. Some might even say he was starting to play better than CJ Stroud. I won't be. I'm not one of those people. I think CJ Stroud is still a good quarterback. But I think anybody who drafted him in fantasy this year, like I did not enjoy that at all. Did not think that was a good pick. That's fine. But here's my thing, is that we have to let this play out. And now the Bears have a coach to go with the quarterback, and it's all about making that work together. For the first time in a long time, and the first time in what is seemingly forever, Chris Myers, somebody who has covered this league, he's still a little hesitant, but understands that the Bears look like they have their quarterback and it looks like they have their coach. And even though he has some reservations, understandably, about the Bears organization and front office, I feel like you can look at this coaching search as evidence of why you should be enthusiastic about it. I know that there's going to be some old heads. I know that Mike North and people like that, and my friend Jeremy, are going to be like, nope, I need to see it before I believe it. Even Kyle Long, who we had an opportunity to talk. By the way, you'll notice there's no Kyle Long interview with these clips. I was to be like, wait, Kyle Long and I did have a nice conversation at the Super Bowl. I let Laquan in our Rams podcast take, because he had a great story about growing up. So check out Laquan's LA Rams podcast. So I allowed that to happen. I just wanted to hang out with Kyle Long. Kyle Long, like James Jones, buddy. Like, I don't need to sit here and interview him. I will have him on the show. Actually, what we're going to try to do is I want to have Kyle Long on our May 4th episode. It'll make sense when it happens. We'll be able to talk about that. But again, there's a lot of people, like Kyle Long being part of this, of people who are like, don't tell me. This is something Kyle said. Don't tell me, show me. And that's fine. That is 100% reasonable. That's a reasonable request. You need to be shown that this is going to be the way the things are done now. It's easy to say it. And again, it's a theme where we're talking about accountability. We're talking about why this era feels different and all that stuff, which is great. We need to be shown. And over the next couple of weeks, as we get into the Combine, as we get into the draft season, free agency, all that stuff, the Bears will have an opportunity to show us that they're continuing to move forward. Just because they hired Ben Johnson, just because they got their guy, doesn't mean the work is over. If anything, it means the work is just beginning. So I want to thank Chris Myers for being here. It was an absolute pleasure to be in his company and to talk to him, and just watching those video clips back, being like, oh my God. And for those of you who are not watching the video clips, he looked engaged. He looked like he was happy to see me. So it's a big thrill for me as a geek who grew up watching sports on TV. How can you not enjoy that? But in any event, thanks to everybody for checking us out. Thanks to everybody for allowing us this opportunity to do it, be a part of our Super Bowl journey. We've got more great content coming up, so we'll see you very soon. And Sammy, go ahead and play us out.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Adam Rank on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.